You guys need the applause. Thank you for coming on Saturday and in the morning. While I believe it's beneficial, I believe all of us, when we make those commitments, some of you know, like when you go and exercise or invest in yourself, it may be hard to get there, but you're proud of yourself afterward, right? I think things like this are kind of like that, where it's an investment in you and in the community and the place you believe in. And sometimes it's hard to get here. So I don't want to call it a sacrifice, but it feels like it because it's hard to get here. But once you're here, you're like, man, I'm glad I made that time. That was a good use of my time on a Saturday. So thank you. Thank you very much for being here. And I really, in preparation for this, I'd asked Christian what the flow was, what we want to talk about specifically. And he really just asked me to kind of share my heart about what Sundays mean, what services mean, what it is that you all do to serve your church community and really in reaching the one. And there's so many parables in Scripture about that. You guys have spent some time on those, so I'm not going to rehash those. But in preparation and in prayer, just about what I felt like, finding out what God wanted me to share, in just sharing my heart about first-time guests, new believers, unsaved, all that. Even in the analogy I just shared with it feels like sacrifice, but you're glad you came to this. Well, at a different level, for those of us that may be here on a Sunday that aren't at your level of involvement, right, engagement, commitment to the church, you think about if it's a sacrifice sometimes for us to do the extra things. Think about for someone that's just considering coming for the first time. For them, as a discipline, it's early, it's new, it feels like a sacrifice. And how many of you know, like, that if you're doing something you're not really, really excited about yet, maybe it's a new gym you signed up to or a new restaurant. If there's no parking, like, that's annoying. Like, you might just leave because you don't know if the food's good yet or not. You're like, there's no parking, or like the curbs are all beat up, or they didn't have umbrellas or heaters by the front door and it's cold. There's little things, like, even before you get to the dinner, because you're not bought in yet. You're like, this place stinks. I'm never coming back. A good friend of mine who's in marketing said years ago, if you're driving around looking for a new restaurant and it happens to be like a Friday night, like last night, my wife and I did like a delayed Valentine's Day last night instead of Wednesday. And how many know you can't get babysitters on Valentine's Day? So we did Valentine's Day with our kids, and then, it was kind of like not a whole day, but like 3 or 4 o'clock, we got started. We finished our day at the office and met up about 4 o'clock. And so we did some shopping, hanging out, and then we're going to have dinner. Well, by the time we went to our favorite place, it was like an hour wait, and the place next door was like 45 minutes, and so we just went home. And we were joking, we're like, now that we're, older parents, all that, we're like, our most excited, like, our babysitters, like, love us because we were never home later than like 9 or 10 o'clock. And, like, could you stay till 9? And they're like, really? Like, you're gonna be home at 9 o'clock? Yeah, because we actually look forward to getting it home and in bed, and like, Erica wants her bath and her routine. Like, that's the most exciting part of our day. Like, getting home and going to bed. That's like, yes. Movies, no. Like, yeah. Brand new restaurant, no. Bedtime. So we had a great time. But in doing so, like last night, you get to a place, and if it's not a place you already know the food well, you're not willing to invest as much. And a lot of people that have studied church have done all kind of research, and there's varying details and degrees of numbers and figures, but the overarching theme really of a first-time guest, given they don't have as much buy-in and commitment yet, right? They don't know if they like it. They say that most people make their decision to return within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the experience. And so the reality is, before they hear like redonkulous worship music we have at every campus, incredibly talented, before they hear great ministry and speaking and even feel the anointing, for the most part, everything that you all do is their first 5 to 10 minute experience. And so I think about that, like, I want to talk about, I had this crazy experience a couple years ago. We took some of our staff to a conference, and it was in a real snowy part of town, or part of the country around Christmas, and they had this like Polar Express train ride where you could like go on this train car, and dancers come through and give you hot chocolate and coffee, and it's like you entered this time warp, and all of a sudden you went from Arizona all the way to North Pole in like minutes, and you come back to your house. And so it's like this virtual experience. Well, we learned more about the owner who bought this train. It was a retired old train car. He fixed it up, made it look like this, had this idea. In the summer, it's like an adventure ride where you can see wilderness and see animals. In the winter, they make it like the Polar Express, like a Christmas, the movie theme. So we're on this deal. Well, there's like 30 of us in this one train car. We pretty much took up the whole train car, and we all know each other. We're family, friends, we work together, and we're having conversations. Like, we're leaning across the aisles, like talking to each other, but they have like a show, like intermittently, these people that work for the train car would like run down the aisle and do a song and dance. Consequently, one of them that was on the train on the way there got kicked off because he was inebriated and was doing backflips down the aisle and almost kicked a few of us in the face. And so that was kind of funny. That was separate and awkward, but not the point of the story. So they replaced that guy, that elf, whatever, with the new elf. But at one point, like, he was actually, at the time, if you guys remember Jim Matan, still attend here, but he works for TBN now as our CFO. Jim and I and another guy, I think it was even Brian Coleman, were talking and having a conversation. Well, so Jim was turned around on his seat and talking to Brian in the seat behind him. And at one point, like, these people kept coming down, and they were like, the staff was like, shh, like shushing us, like, shh, you can't hear the song, shh, you can't hear the music. We're like in a small train car. It's not like a stage and like a nice concert. And we pretty much bought the place out. The whole car was just us. It wasn't like we were disturbing someone else on the train. And frankly, what we want to say is no one's interested in your show. We just want to talk and hang out. Like, but there was this deal like where we learned about the owner and his idea of like giving kids and families this great experience of like they're going to the North Pole and this whole deal. And this guy kept coming back. I'm sorry, it was a girl. This lady kept coming back and kept shushing us. And at one point, she finally walked up to Jim, who I guess had the loudest voice, but everyone was talking, and said, "Sir, if you don't stop talking, I'm gonna kick you off this train." And we're like, it turned into this really like bad experience. It became very awkward. Like, she ruined the experience for us. And I realized like she, like on the flow chart of this business, knowing the heart of the owner and what his intention was for a family, would that owner have ever shushed her and shushed us and made us feel awful and want to get off the train? No. The manager probably wouldn't have done it. The coordinator that scheduled that particular host, but I don't know what was going on in her life, and but not really knowing the heart of the owner, right? That person that's way down the totem pole, right? That isn't a volunteer, they're staff, but so the analogy there is kind of broken for you today, but they ruin this experience just because of whatever's going on. And I realized like it's really true like for us, like I know that being raised in church, knowing the heart of my parents, and now knowing how I feel about it, it's so important for us to know that for some people that aren't yet engaged, have not fallen in love with Jesus, don't know the heart of the Father, don't know even the heart of the ministry, haven't had a chance to experience the anointing that comes 30, 40 minutes later, all of that. It starts in that first few minutes, and for us to know that number one, it's a big sacrifice for someone to take that amount of time, especially for someone that doesn't even have the buy-in yet. I want to talk to you about patience and ownership. There's one of my favorite scriptures in Romans. Romans is a great book for a lot of reasons. There's a word though used in Romans 3. It's Romans 3 verse 21. It starts there. And the title here is God's righteousness through faith. Paul says, "But now the righteousness of God apart from the law is revealed, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ to all and on all who believe. For there is no difference, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." We know that scripture. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God set forth as a propitiation by his blood through faith to demonstrate his righteousness. So God sent Jesus, he shed his blood to demonstrate his righteousness. And watch this. This is my favorite word here because of what it means. Because in his, that's speaking of God, in his forbearance, God had passed over the sins that were previously committed to demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. A few years ago, we did a series called Lifesavers about the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all that. It's in Galatians 5. And when we got to patience, that was 1 week, and it ended up being one of my favorite weeks. And because I've always said, in the past I had said, I'm not a real patient person. I think that's probably not so unique to me. I think a lot of us deal with that. But what I learned in preparation for the own series that I was doing most of and had kind of come up with the idea for, I learned that patience isn't one of those innate personality traits you're just born with. There are some, I believe, based on the gifts and the personality God gives you, there are some of us that are better at displaying and or operating in patience than others. But the patience is actually the fourth aspect to the fruit of the Spirit. When you're walking with God and you're filled with His Spirit, you begin to exude love because you've felt His love, right? You walk in a level of joy and peace that you haven't had before. Those first three are actually gifts from God. They're not gifts you can have unless He gave them to you. It's really cool. And those three things, the first three, fruit of the Spirit, produce the first thing that really is custom to you. God doesn't need patience because He's perfect in all His responses, right? But forbearance was the definition of the word patience in Galatians 5. When what I realized is forbearance is a beforehand deciding. It's almost prophetic, like seeing into the future. Because I invest in this church, because I believe in this ministry, at times I might even overlook things that would bother me because I know in time we'll get it worked out, but I'm going to choose to be patient ahead of time, knowing that the trial's going to come, knowing that the person with the bad attitude is going to come, knowing the day is going to come where I don't want to be, knowing these things are going to happen. Because of forbearance, I am going to decide ahead of time to be patient. And I realized, like in my marriage or with my kids, like that message in that series 2 years ago really ministered to me to say, you know what, patience isn't like a personality trait. Patience is a decision ahead of time because you value the relationship. I choose to be patient. I'm going to decide to become patient. I don't have to learn to become patient. Patience is a response to the love of God that you've received. Patience is a response to the joy you felt in His presence. Patience is a response, right, to the peace that's come over you in times of trial. Patience is, man, because I believe so much in the whole, right? I can be patient in a moment or in one situation. I choose patience. And what I love about the scripture in Romans 3, it says that because in His forbearance, He passed over all sins previously committed so He could be just. Here's the deal. Here's what, if I put it in New English, God passed over all the sins of the past because He had not been man before. He couldn't judge man fairly. Because it says He did this so He could be just. I love that line that you see God's heart to want to be fair. He wants to be just in His judgment. I'm not going to unfairly judge something I haven't personally experienced. And what Paul's saying here is God had never been man before. He made man, but had never been man until Jesus came. Like I said last Sunday, it's important for us to know that Jesus didn't come appearing as a man. He came as a man. Very different. Why? Because now Jesus, being a part of the Godhead, right? Being all God, all flesh, Jesus having firsthand, for real, experienced what it feels like to be hurt, to be wounded, to be lied on, to be spat on, to be cursed at, He knows. Now that God knows, really, not sees it and feels empathetic, but lived through it Himself, experienced it Himself. Now, because of that, in His forbearance, in an effort to be just, He passed over the sins previously committed until Jesus could come. I love that. We know life isn't fair, right? But we have a God who just, because of grace, right? It makes it wonderful. Life isn't fair. But in His sovereignty and in His perfection, right, He worked out a way. And so what I see with that is how many of you have things in your house, maybe we call a messy closet or trash under the couch, or people come over and you're it's the mad rush to clean up, So for a lot of us, there's certain things that when it's in your own life, you got patience for. It might frustrate you. You want to get to the project, but you'll give yourself a good amount of grace, right? And so in thinking about that, I'm whatever our jobs are, here's the deal. There's a great quote that about process or procedure, that the procedures are made to serve the people, not people made to serve the process or procedure, right? And as soon as you see people having to serve the procedure, it needs to be torn apart and rebuilt. And so, like, I understand, like, historically, for the most part, I think everyone that I'm looking at, those of you that have been here a while, those that are newer, you know, whatever old habits we've had probably have been broken and rewritten, and we're really headed down a good path. But my thing is, like, for us, I just want us to decide ahead of time, you know, if someone takes an hour or two out of their Sunday to try us for the first time, you know, it's like, last night, Eric and I, we actually ended up going to a restaurant that had some space for us. We didn't just go home first. It was a last-minute decision. It wasn't the place we wanted to go, but we had a great time together. And there was this table right next to us. And how many of you know, like, you go to a restaurant, like, you know, you don't, like, get to choose who waits on you, who you sit next to, what baby's screaming, or guy is having a passionate moment. So this dude was just like going off, like, not at the friend he was sitting with, but about something they both either worked together, and just yelling. And I was facing him. I could see him. Erica's back was to him. And she's like eating her food. She's like, it's hard for us to have a discussion. You know, it's like, it's distracting, right? I didn't get to choose who we sat next to. And really, for the most part, church is the same way. Like, you don't get to choose who comes, but because we know what it's done for us, right? Like, it's like, I'm gonna put up with it for a little while. I'm gonna give this guy some space, because I believe that the seeds that are being planted are gonna make a difference. And so like, I just want us to know, like, man, if this person took the time, if they're new, they probably do have some stuff going on, right? If they're new to God, if they're new to church, I would expect them to, like in the hospital analogy, right? I mean, a hospital is not full of healthy people. You know, it's full of sick people for a reason. And so if someone's new, then they probably got some stuff they're dealing with. And so for us, like, even beyond the procedure, I just want you guys to know, like, that back to the analogy of the Polar Express train car, like, my heart is, man, if someone wants to sit on the back row and cross over the little median lot, whatever, like, man, if that's where their head's at, we want whatever they'll give us. And the fact that they showed up and actually made it from the parking lot, right, to the sanctuary, and made it through this part, and yeah, it's like, man, that I got all the patience in the world for that, you know. If I believe in the product we have, then I believe at some point they're gonna grow to a place, right? Like we saw, I don't know if Barron's here or not, the video testimony about Barron and Chris, and the invitation, and the way he just kept going after him. You know, Chris started running from him, hiding from him, and I love that. That doesn't always work out that way. That person might have left because Barron was too aggressive, I don't know. We're glad Chris didn't leave. But from the top down, from the invitation he got at the business convention all the way through, like, that's just such a beautiful team effort. And I just want you guys to know, like that my heart, right, and I want to be clear too, I'm kind of putting myself in the shoes of owner, and that's not even accurate. But I am the one responsible, along with our team, to produce what would be procedures and processes, you know, so we take ownership. And so what I want to say, like, all the patience, and I hope you guys are able to keep up with me. It's kind of, Cage told me to share my heart, so I don't have, like, 5-point bullet notes and all that. It's just my heart. Like, the reason why I can be patient is because I feel ownership. There's an element to that. It's like, it's mine to give away. It's mine to change. It's my rule to break. And I want you guys to feel ownership. There's a great quote that stewardship is managing whatever it is, managing it with the owner in mind. And the reality is, I mean, he's the owner, right? God, this is God's house. But he's entrusted us, not just me, he's entrusted us with managing it. And like, on one hand, when it's your house and you own it, I don't know how many of you are in a leasing position or an ownership position, but I've not done a lot of leasing. The first house I ever was in, my dad helped me get the loan, but I bought and paid for it and had roommates. But then between Eric and I getting married and the house we live in now, we lived in an apartment for a few months while we looked for a house, because our house sold in like 3 days and we didn't know where we were going. And so anyway, but like in leasing, I realized that when I'm leasing something, like, the ownership is on, like, you need to come change my air filter, you need to mow my grass, like, you need to, you know, but when you own it, you know you need to do it, And you might pay for someone else to come help you do it if you don't know how to do it, but it's up to you to do it, right? And so I actually, if I tell myself a little bit, we moved in our house. We've been there for almost 8 years or 9 years now. When we moved in our house we're in now, because I'd been in this previous apartment place for like 9, 10, 11 months, somewhere in there, I hadn't had to change an air filter like in 3 or 4 cycles, right? Every 2, 3 months, 4 months. I try to do it more than they say, like 3 to 6 months. I do like every 2 months. And it literally was a year, almost a year and a half into living there. It's 3 in the morning, I'm laying in bed, and I sit up like just sheer panic. I'm like, how did you do different? You know, I go to Walmart at like 4 in the morning, and I buy like 2 like 24 packs. I'm like, I'm up there. Erica's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I haven't changed the air filter in a year and a half. I'm the worst ever. Just because I was out of the sequence, you know. But I'm willing, like, you know, you come in your own, when it's your house and you own it, you know, and they like you take better care of it. But if there's a project, like when we bought our house, it was a newer construction, and so they had already picked the brands for like the stovetop and the oven and all that, but there was no fridge. So we wanted to match the same brand of fridge. Well, it was Frigidaire, and I guess Frigidaire is like not a good brand. I've learned that now, like quality-wise. So it keeps like breaking over the last 6, 7 years, keeps breaking. And so the water, like the ice still works, but the water dispenser doesn't work. So now we had to get like a water pitcher, and because the guy came out and was like $500 to fix the water, the whole system. He had to replace the whole door or something. I'm like, this fridge isn't even worth $500 anymore. So Eric and I went last night and finally bought a new fridge. But like, because it's my house, like I'm like, I don't mind having to like use a water pitcher instead of the fridge for a while. That's kind of like my prerogative, right? Like, it's not a big deal to me. But like when you feel ownership, like you're able to operate when it's yours to give away, when it's yours to keep, when it's yours to steward, when it's yours to care for. Like you're gonna take better care of it. But when it relates to others, like there's a certain level of patience you now have the right to give away that otherwise, if you're just following the procedures of another man or another person, another leader, then you're kind of stuck in that. And sometimes we can get caught up in that. I just want you guys today to feel ownership. I want you to know that because you're part of stewarding, right, what it is that God's given us, then in the moment, for the sake of the person, for the sake of the heart, for the sake of the experience, for the sake of whatever's going on, you can break whatever rules. Like, I mean, just like if you got to leave your post to walk somebody. Exciting, I want to tell you guys quickly. It was 3 weeks ago when Bob Goff was here. I went and picked him up at like 8 o'clock at his hotel, and we got here about 8:15, and then he had a chance to talk to the team about his service and notes, got mic'd up, and then he was like 8:30, he's like, hey, can we go hug some people? I was like, sure. Service didn't start for 30 minutes. I hope there's a few people here, but let's go hug some people. So we walked out to the lobby, and I could tell, like, when someone would walk in and see him, I could tell if they were, like, coming just to hear him and new to Covenant, or if they were regular Covenant people. And, of course, a lot of the people I would recognize and know. But there was this one couple in particular, and they walked right up to the table to buy a book, and Pastor Bob was talking to another couple, and I could tell, like, they were just, like, enamored, like, staring at him. And so I walked up to introduce myself. I said, hi, how are you? And they said, yeah, we're good. We heard that Bob Goff is going to be here. I just read his book, and my husband wants to read it. He's going to buy one. But they had like a 6-year-old son. I said, oh, so it's your first time? They go, yeah, we're new. I go, well, my name's Stephen, and you know, I'm on staff here. And I said, well, do you need any help, like, getting around the campus? Like, would you like to take your son to kids church? And they go, sure. Like, where is it? And I go, well, how old is he? Because here in Carrollton, we have from 0 to 35 months in this building, but 36 and above is across the street. And as she asked the question, like, knowing the answer I have to give her, I'm already like, I go, oh, actually, she's like, he's 6. I'm like, well, the 6-year-olds are actually in the building right across the parking lot. I'd be happy to walk. I'm like, as I'm saying it, I'm seeing her face just go like, and like, no. I'm like, I'd be happy to walk you over there. I'm thinking in my mind, like, because I don't have this great answer for her, because it's kind of difficult with 2 separate buildings, and it can be awkward if it's rainy like today, like it's just bad. And I'm like, I'm thinking, I'll go get a golf cart. I'll go get I will drive you over there. Like, I'm trying to think, what can I promise this lady to make it the best experience? And she's like, no, we'll probably just keep him with us. I go, all right. I thought about that, like there's some things like that we're going to work on. You know, there's some stuff like that you all in a moment can't fix, but we can help to overcome and by offering to do things. So anyway, we've been working on it for a long time. We kind of hit the pause button during the transition. It's not good to start like a massive project, in that time. But the church is doing really fun. If I could just brag on our church, and on you all as a part of it, on our staff. So this is something we share with the elders. But in the year-end report, if you saved 2016's report and looked at 2017's, you could do the math yourself. But total receipts, you would call like the end-year giving, we were down about 9% this year in financial giving, but we were up in weekend attendance. A lot of that also is Dallas isn't as much an oil city as others are, but I know like our friend Pastor Craig Rochelle Life Church, I have a lot of big oil folks in his church. They were down like over 20% last year. A lot of my friends down in the Houston area and the Bay Area, down even upwards of 30-40%. Because a lot of people that work in their church either own the oil groups or work on the oil rigs, and it just was hit hard. So, we could say it was 10% down because of transition, but it could have been for a lot of different reasons. But we were up in attendance and all that. Well, here's where it gets really cool. Because of the continued faithfulness of serving and giving and being creative with how we can manage our overtime hours and contract laborers and renegotiating contracts with IT and other services, we brought in $9 million or 9% less last year, but we gave away almost twice to the world. Our missions went up by like 60 some odd percent. I think it was between 800,000 and 900,000 in 2016 and almost 1.5 million in 2017, which is pretty cool. And we also ended the year, we're not a savings account or a bank, but it's important when you're a large operation to have cash flow. You want to have money in reserve for the worst case scenario, right? So our goal has always been to have $2 to $3 million in a revolving cash account to pay, contracts, any kind of debt service, all that. Well, at the end of last year, we had a little under $3 million. It was like $2.6 million in the bank. And this year, in a down year, giving more away to the world, still paying off the little debt we have left, and doing projects, capital projects, remodeling this and changing that. We have almost $5 million in the bank, almost doubled it in a down year and giving more money away. And that's just, again, stewardship, right? Stewardship is managing it with the owner in mind, right? And we want to be good stewards. So the cool thing about the position we're in, the church is doing well, attendance is good, money's good, based on the budgets and all that we put together. And so there's a project here in Carrollton we've been considering for a long time that we're going to get going pretty soon, which involves a sanctuary, this building, new infant and toddler, potentially even elementary, we'll see. And then like this huge, really cool sky bridge that like is going to connect the two buildings. So it would tie in the two buildings, make them really feel more like one. And then all the classrooms here that are like the current infant and toddlers, we're actually going to tear those out. Right now, like we have like 18 to 1,900 seats in this sanctuary, and there's no way you could fit anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people in the lobby, right? So we have insufficient lobby in contrast or in comparison to the amount of seats we have. So when you talk about transitions with getting kids checked in and out, that bad experience, you're giving the opportunity for the enemy to, it's just bad experiences waiting to happen. Parking lot's good, really, traffic flow, we worked that out a couple years ago. But we have some issues there. So we're gonna tear out these kids' classrooms, and we will, for the first time ever, have as much square foot in lobby and entry space as we have in sanctuary, which is gonna be great for that first 5 to 10 minutes, right? That's huge. And we also will just have more places to hang out, to socialize, to meet with people, just beautiful flow. And then brand new state-of-the-art, for infants and toddlers, possibly even if we do a second or third floor in that building, would be for elementary. So then all the kids' ministry on Sunday would be right here close. And then it would just be like youth and offices and other things across the way. So some really cool stuff there. And so that project is gonna range based on how much we develop it between like $6 and $10 million. So it's not cheap, but like I said, we've got some good cash in the bank. And what I've heard from God and got confirmation by other men that I trust is that we feel a peace about getting the project started based on our current cash position. Maybe even have a have a construction loan in place, like an 18 to 24 month construction loan in place, but then start raising money. And I believe by the end of that phase of building it, which would take probably 15 to 16, 18 months. They say 12, it always takes more, right? Then we'll have the whole thing paid for, right? Yeah. So some fun stuff. So it's gonna improve the potential experience in that first 5-10 minutes. And in that Sunday I told you about with Bob Goff being here, that family, I just realized, like, I hope if they came in and had a great experience, based on the experience that happens in here, and you guys' beautiful smiling faces and the wonderful all that, I pray they would consider returning. But based on the fact they're like, you know what, no, I don't want to walk across the way to get my kid to another building. How many experiences like that do we have every week that we don't know about, where people try it and they're like, well, I would if, right? Because early on, what is it? Covers a multitude of sins. Grace, just the saying, like, it covers a multitude of sins. I'm missing the first. Huh? Love, thank you. Well, if you replace love with like buy-in or commitment, like for you guys, your commitment to covenant covers a multitude of not having a walkway to the kids area. But for some that don't have the buy-in yet, they're like, well, I'm gonna go to so-and-so, and frankly, like, I thought of this a year or two ago. I was thinking about, like, if I, being a young father and a young family, having young kids, if I came to Covenant Church, but I didn't have family history, none of that, if that was the experience, like, would this be my church, or would I? And one of the potential thoughts I had was, well, it's hard to say for sure. I obviously love the church, and I'm very biased. But as an adult now, and as one in this day and age with technology, I probably would go somewhere that my kids loved and that had an easy experience for them. And then if the church I was going to didn't really feed me, then I would supplement my own spiritual health with streaming or just watching Covenant Church on the week. Like during the week, I'd just watch the message, And so that was like my honest feeling. Like, there's a potential I might not even come here if it was too awkward. If I had no like ties and no bot and no like relationship to Covenant historically, I was like, for the sake of my kids. So I feel like we're a great church if you're single, and a great church maybe if you're an empty nester or your kid's a teenager and they can just walk over by themselves. But that young family, we have some things to fix, And historically, the reason why this was done that way is 15, 20 years ago, this building, all the kids ministry was just in this building alone. And we built a school just to be a school. We didn't do anything on Sunday over there. Well, then we grew, and kids ministry needed to grow, and so that's how that happened. And so we didn't have enough forbearance or to see it ahead in the future. So we're working on that project. Look forward to that. We're just fine-tuning the plans now, kind of dusting the dust off. And we're going to get that going. But I really today, again, when you feel ownership, which I want you guys to have, there's an authority you have, right? And which I want you to feel and have. And again, the processes, the procedures are only meant to serve the people. And if in a moment, for the sake of going after the one, that process isn't working for that person, you have full right to break it. Cool? I love you. That's all I got. I don't know.
Well, thank you. Making us owners. We're in it with you.
Sir.
We're privileged to receive that and to own it and to carry your heart into the lobby, into all the experiences when those that are looking for hope and love in Jesus come in. It's our privilege and our pleasure to carry that. Amen. Thank you so much, man. All right.